This is a reading from the Notebooks by Marie Valtorta, 1943, September 23rd. Jesus says, I shall return to one of the dominant notes in what I have said. Two notes are dominant, Maria. The need for love, the first. The need for penance, the second. In truth, the triune God who created you, giving you a realm where all were subject to you, and from which pain was banished, and where death would not have existed to cut off the lives of those most loved, amidst the fears of the dying and the moans of the survivors, but only of falling asleep, like Mary's, among the placid mists of innocent slumber, to pass through the gates which were so ready to open upon the earthly paradise, to flood it with the light of the highest paradise, and with the fatherly voice of the Lord, who found his joy in remaining with his children. In truth, your God had established one need alone for you, the need for love. The love of children for the Father, the love of subjects for the King, the love of creatures for the Creator God. And if you had not corroded the roots of love with the acid of sin, it would have grown powerful in you, without requiring any labor of you, no labor, but joy for you, a need which brings relief when it is met, just as breathing is for you. And, indeed, love was destined to be the breath of your spirits, the blood of your spirits. Then sin came. Oh, the ruin of sin! You that are horrified at the ruins of your buildings, your churches, your bridges, and your cities, and curse the explosives which smash, pulverize, and damage everything. Don't you consider the ruin which sin has wrought in man? In man, the most perfect work in creation, because he was not made by a human hand, but by eternal intelligence, which, shall we say, has fused you together as metal without slag, in his own form, and has drawn you out and made his image and likeness, so beautiful and pure that God's eye rejoiced before his work, and the heavens leapt with admiration, and the earth sang in a very loud voice, in the midst of the harmony of the spheres, over the glory of being the planet that, at the origins of the universe, was becoming the royal palace of the man-king, the Son of God. Sin, more ill-omened than all dynamite, shook man in his roots, and you know where they were? In the thought of God, who had made man. Footnote. There follows a note in pencil, perhaps written by Father Migliorini. The thought of God made man, in quotation marks. Sin, at the roots of man, shook that perfect complex of flesh and spirit, of flesh, in the movements of feelings, not unlike the spirit, since it was only heavier than the spirit, but not opposed to it, much less an enemy, with a spirit not imprisoned as a prisoner exasperated in the jail of the flesh, but with a spirit rejoicing in the docile flesh which it guided to God, for, as a molecule of the Spirit of God, it was attracted to God, as if by a divine magnet, through the relations of love between the Creator, the All, and the Spirit, the Part. Footnote. In the sense explained in the dictations of August 17th, October 1st, October 7th, and October 10th. Sin shook those harmonious surroundings which God had placed around his Son, so that he would be a king, and a happy king. Once man's love for God had fallen, the earth's love for man fell. Ferocity was unleashed on earth among the lower creatures, between these and man, and, the horror of horrors, between man and man. That blood, which was to be warm with the love of God alone, became hot with hatred, seethed, and began to drip out, polluting the altar of the earth upon which God had placed his first ones, so that they would love him by loving one another, and teach love to those of the future, the only right God wanted from you. And so a plant was then born of the seed of sin, and it was a plant with bitter fruit and prickly branches, pain. First, pain suffered as man could suffer it in his embryonic polluted spirituality, an animal pain made up of the first pains of woman and the first wounds inflicted upon the flesh of brothers, a fierce pain of wails and curses, the seed of ever-new vendettas, then becoming refined in ferocity, but not in merit. Pain, too, evolved, getting vaster and more complicated. I came to sanctify pain, suffering pain for you, and fusing your pains in relation to my infinite pain, thereby giving merit to pain. I came to confirm with my life and my death the warning given over and over again by the prophets. It is not material circumcision that God requires to forgive and bless his children, more and more blameworthy, but the circumcision of hearts, of your sentiments, of your stimuli, which the germ of the first sin always turns into the stimuli of flesh and blood, or of the highest form of lust, that of the mind. It is there, O children, that you must work with iron and fire to mark the saving sign, God's, upon your souls. It is there, not with the iron and the fire of your ferocious laws and your accursed wars. It is there, in the place where man's laws and wars are shaped. For it is useless to say the opposite. If you lived under the sign of the Lord, spiritually circumcised, to remove what brings impurity of every kind, you would not be the people you are, senseless, if not outright beasts. And, observe this, beasts and the senseless hardly differ, for in both reason is lacking. That is what God has placed in man, to make him the king over all earthly beings. Man has two needs, love and pain. Love, which keeps you from doing evil, pain, which makes up for evil. This is the science to be learned, to know how to love and to know how to suffer. But you don't know how to love and don't know how to suffer. You know how to cause suffering, but that is not love. Rather, it is hatred. Why are so knowledgeable in evil and ignorant in good? Why? Do you never get your fill of hate and cruelty, and do you want God to forgive you? Come back to love, children, and learn how to bear pain. For if you are not so much my children as to be able to want pain to expiate the sinning of others, as I was able and willing to, at least be children to the extent of not cursing me for the pain which you have generated and of which you accuse me. Down with your foolish pride. Learn from a publican to admit that you are unworthy, as you have become unworthy to live under the gaze which is protection. Cast the vain thirsts of the earth far away from you, and draw near to the fount of life, which for 20 centuries has been flowing for you. Inject life into your hearts, which are dying in sin with gangrene, or in indifference with consumption. Call me to your tombs. I am the Christ, the Resurrector. I ask only to be called, to rush over and say, Come out of death, out of evil, out of selfishness, out of lust, out of the accursed hatred which consumes you without giving you joy, out of what is horror, to enter into me, to enter with me into light, to be reborn in love, to become familiar with true knowledge, to obtain peace and life, which, in being mine, receive eternity from me. Footnote. The writer adds in pencil, Jeremiah chapter 4, verses 4 and 22.